Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where history isn't just old, it's oddly fascinating.
From forgotten facts to bizarre backstories, we dig into the dusty corners of time so
So you
you
don't
don't
have
have to.
to. I'm Jody Lynn, your amateur historian and full time trivia hoarder.
And I'm Efrain here for the facts and the fun.
So let's rewind the clock and press play on the past. Hello, lovelies, and welcome back. I'd like to first apologize for the long wait in the episodes. We went on a very small vacation and then came back absolutely exhausted and could not get ourselves put back together. I do believe we caught the travel bug. Last Thursday, we were going to upload a special episode that was to be recorded in New Orleans about hoodoo and voodoo, but got rained out the night we were going to record it, so here we are doing so now. We did get some good audio from a travel guide about a lovely Miss Laveau, though, and you will get to hear that if you stick around to the end. Without further ado, let's get started down this harrowing journey, shall we? What is the difference between hoodoo and voodoo, you may ask? Well, the main difference is that voodoo is a religion, while hoodoo is a form of folk magic or spirituality. Voodoo is an organized religion with a hierarchical priesthood and is centered on worshiping spirits called Lola. Hoodoo, often called rootwork, is a practice focused on using natural objects like herbs and roots for spiritual and medicinal purposes, and it can be incorporated into various religious beliefs, including Christianity.
Hoodoo, also known as conjure, rootwork, low country voodoo, gullah voodoo, juju, or hoodoo, is a collection of African American spiritual traditions, practices, and beliefs that developed among enslaved Africans in the southern United States. It is not a formal religion, but rather a syncretic spiritual system, blending African religious beliefs with elements of Christianity, Islam, Native American herbalism, and European folk magic. Its purpose centers on harnessing natural and supernatural forces to bring about change, protection, healing, and justice. Practitioners, known as root workers, conjure doctors, or hoodoo men/women, often serve as spiritual leaders, healers, and protectors within enslaved and free Black communities. While hoodoo has similarities to voodoo, it is distinct, rooted primarily in African American folk practice rather than organized religion.
The word hoodoo first appeared in English around 1870, though its roots go back centuries. Some scholars link it to the word hoodoo from the Ewe language of Ghana, Togo, and Benin, meaning spirit work. Others associate it with voodoo, derived from the Fon word voodoo, meaning deity or spirit. The practice itself draws heavily from Central African spiritual systems, especially those of the Bakongo people, who contributed beliefs about the spirit world, ancestor veneration, and the use of charms called nkisi, or plural minkisi. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, millions of Africans, many from the Congo, Angola, and Gabon, were forced into slavery in the Americas, bringing with them their spiritual traditions and adapting them under extreme oppression.
Um, During slavery, African Americans concealed their traditional spiritual practice within Christian context to avoid punishment. This hidden blend of faith and African practice became known as the Invisible Institution. Enslaved people prayed and performed rituals secretly in the woods, are called hush harbors, or at night under overturned pots to muffle the sound. Hoodoo became a form of spiritual resistance, a way to reclaim power and self-determination when freedom was denied. Enslaved Africans used conjure for protection, carrying mojo bags or roots for safety, healing, using herbs and ritual baths, and resistance, casting spells or creating powers to weaken cruel enslavers. Historic accounts describe conjurers using graveyard dirt, herbs, and charms to help enslaved people escape, avoid punishment, or defy enslavers. One famous account describes Peter the Doctor, a free African conjurer who helped lead the 1712 New York slave revolt using protective powders likely made from cemetery dirt to call on ancestral spirits for strength. Invisible churches also became spaces where Christian worship and African ritual blended seamlessly. Here, ministers and root workers alike use hoodoo prayers and symbols to inspire resistance and endurance.
So let's look at the cultural influences and the African origins. First is the Central African influence from Bakongo. The Congo cosmogram, a cross-like symbol representing the life cycle, birth, life, death, and rebirth, is one of the most enduring African symbols in hoodoo. It represents the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds and is closely tied to the hoodoo belief in the crossroads as a place of power and communication with spirits. Artifacts featuring cosmograms, Nkisi bundles, and ritual deposits have been found on former plantations and historic sites across the South such as Savannah's First African Baptist Church, which has cosmogram symbols built into its floor. Then you have the West African influence. The Mandingo, Bombara, and the Mande peoples introduced gris or gree bags, amulets filled with herbs, stones, and personal items, which became the mojo bag in Hoodoo. The Yoruba contributed reverence for natural elements and spirits, especially Ogun, iron, and Shango, lightning. This influence appears in Hoodoo through the use of horseshoes, iron nails, and lightning struck wood as protective charms. I wanted to add, real quick, this whole using iron for protection and spiritual health is used in so many different cultures around the world. My grandpa had a horseshoe above his door.
No.
Had a horseshoe above his door for it. I've heard some people would put iron nail crosses like built into their door frames that were Irish to help with fairies. So the iron thing is it is surprising that it is like a worldwide thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Vodou traditions introduced the worship of serpent and water spirits like Mami Wada, influencing the use of snake skins and water-based rituals in Hoodoo. Islamic influences also exist in enslaved West African Muslims, incorporating Arabic prayers into Hoodoo charms and wore turbans and wide-legged pants, distinguishing them from other enslaved people. Then you've got the language and cultural survival. Many Hoodoo terms like mojo, goofer dust, juju, and toby came from Kikongo, Mande, and Hausa words. Even in the Gula language of the Carolina Low Country, Kikongo-based spiritual titles such as Nganga, healer or priest, survive, showing how linguistic traces of African spirituality persisted in African American communities.
Artifacts and archaeological evidence. Archaeological digs across the American South have uncovered hundreds of physical remnants of Hoodoo practice. Nikisi bundles and clay bowls engraved with cosmograms in Maryland, Louisiana, and Georgia. Blue beads, coins, and bottle trees for protection against evil spirits. Walking sticks and divination rods used to curse enslavers or heal community members. Mojo and conjure bags filled with herbs, graveyard dirt, and personal items used similarly to Central African Minkisi. These artifacts reveal how enslaved Africans maintain their spiritual heritage in secret, adopting African ritual forms to new materials and environments.
The where did it go? Oh, the bottle trees is a southern thing too. That is big in the South, not just within the African American communities, but a lot of white and Native American communities as well. But I believe they all use it for a similar reason, but it's worded different in each like area that you talk about it. That game that I was playing, West of Midnight or something like that, the one that I was really excited about because it was during the hurricane.
Yeah.
And all the spirits. She actually has to go through and find bottle trees to trap the spirits. So I thought that was I figured I'd add that. Following the Civil War, Hoodoo continued to evolve. Freedmen carried these traditions into the Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras, when spiritual work was used both for survival and empowerment. Conjure doctors offered love spells, protection charms, and herbal remedies. One major figure was Pascal Beverly Randolph, a free black occultist, abolitionist, and educator who studied Louisiana voodoo and hoodoo. He later founded the Brotherhood of Euless, one of the earliest African American mystical societies. During the Great Migration from 1910 to 1970, millions of African Americans brought hoodoo to northern cities like Chicago, New York, and Detroit, where urban root workers adapted rituals for city life. Instead of gathering herbs in the woods, practitioners bought ingredients in botanicas or spiritual shops and began incorporating new materials like colored candles, oils, and incense. Black Herman, or Benjamin Rucker, became a well-known hoodoo magician and healer traveling across the country offering stage magic, fortune-telling, and spiritual services. His career symbolized hoodoo's blend of mysticism, performance, and folk medicine.
Modern practice and social role. In modern times, hoodoo remains an active spiritual tradition among African Americans. It has been integrated into social justice movements, particularly Black Lives Matter, where rituals, altars, and libation ceremonies honor victims of racial violence. Community healing, with root workers establishing centers for spiritual and emotional recovery. art and literature, as seen in works by Renee Stout and other Black artists who highlight Hoodoo's influence on African American identity and resilience. Voodoo also continues to serve as a spiritual defense against threats to Black life and culture, whether against police brutality, gentrification, or erasure of heritage sites. In some regions, curses placed by root workers are said to protect ancestral lands from exploitation.
Some core beliefs and symbolisms. At its heart, Hoodoo emphasizes connection to ancestors and spirits, the sacred power of nature, the roots, herbs, water, fire, earth, balance between physical and spiritual worlds, often symbolized by the crossroads, the practical results, where every ritual or spell has a tangible purpose: love, luck, justice, protection, and moral reciprocity. Harmful magic, cursing, is justified only when balancing wrongs or protecting oneself from evil.
Conclusion. Hoodoo represents a profound legacy of African culture, survival, adaptation, and resistance in the Americas. It is both a healing practice and spiritual technology of liberation created by enslaved Africans and carried forward by generations of African Americans. Today, Hoodoo continues to evolve, honoring ancestors, reclaiming Black spirituality, and affirming identity in the face of centuries of oppression. It remains a living bridge between the African past and the African American present, a spiritual system of survival, empowerment, and transformation.
Now, switching from hoodoo to voodoo, Haitian voodoo, also called Vodou, voodoo, or Vado, is a syncretic religion that developed among the enslaved Africans in colonial Saint Domingue, which is modern day Haiti, during the 17th and 18th centuries. It blends West and Central African spiritual traditions, especially from the Fon, Yoruba, and Congo peoples, with Roman Catholicism and elements of indigenous Tano beliefs. Voodoo revolves around serving the spirits Iwa, who act as intermediaries between humans and Bonye, the supreme creator. It emphasizes balance, reciprocity, healing, and ancestral connection, forming one of the most deeply rooted African diasporic religions in the Americas. I want to say really quick, we are trying our best to say some of these words. I have a bad habit of forgetting to look up how to say these words before we hit start. So I am very sorry if I'm saying any of these wrong. He's probably sorry if he says anything wrong, but we're trying.
I'm not.
Be nice.
African roots. Enslaved Africans from Dahomey, Benin, Nigeria, and the Congo brought with them a complex system of ancestor worship, spirit possession, and ritual healing. The Fon, and
I'm going to say you.
it's EWE, contributed the idea of serving divine spirits, while Yoruba traditions added to Orisha-like deities, divination practices, and ceremonial drumming. From Central Africa, the Pakongo people influenced the cosmology ideas about the spirit world and the use of sacred symbols like the Congo cosmogram, representing life, death, and rebirth. Together, these spiritual systems blended with Catholic practices introduced by French colonists. Enslaved people were baptized, attended Mass, and learned saints' names, but privately they equated Catholic saints with African spirits. This masking allowed traditional worship to survive under the guise of Christianity. French colonial law demanded Catholic conversion and forbade African religious gatherings. Despite this, enslaved people continued to hold secret ceremonies in the forests and mountains, known as Vodun dances. They invoked the Iwa through drumming, singing, and possession. Voodoo became not only a religious system, but a spiritual resistance movement, giving enslaved Africans unity, cultural identity, and emotional strength in the face of brutality.
Voodoo played a central role in the Haitian Revolution. From 1791 to 1804, which led to the first successful slave revolt in history and the founding of Haiti as a free Black republic. The most famous early event was the Boys Cayman ceremony in August of 1791, led by priest Dutty Boukman and Mambo Cecile Fatiman. The ceremony called on ancestral spirits for liberation and solidarity. Many revolutionaries, including Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Toussaint this is a lot of French. Louverture were said to be influenced by voodoo beliefs and consulted spiritual advisors for guidance. Voodoo's combination of African unity, divine justice, and ancestral power made it a rallying force for rebellion, shaping Haiti's birth as both a nation and a spiritual homeland.
Core beliefs. The Bondi, the supreme creator. Bondi is the ultimate distant creator god, benevolent but not directly involved in human affairs. Instead, practitioners interact with the Iwa, powerful spirits who serve as intermediaries. Lola spirits. The They each govern specific aspects of life, emotion, and nature. They are honored through offerings, songs, and ritual dancers. Major categories include Rada, benevolent ancestral spirits from Dahomey; Petro, fiery, aggressive spirits born from Haiti's struggles; Gede, spirits of death and fertility led by Baron Samedi and Mama Brigitte. Each Iwa.
Okay, so I'm just going to say this really quick. Iwa is how we're saying it. I'm not sure that's how you say it, but it's LWA. So we're going to just keep saying Iwa until somebody corrects us. Okay?
Okay. Each Iwa has unique colors, veve, songs, and sacred preferences. Possession by a Iwa, where the spirits mounts a devotee, is a core feature of ceremonies. Ancestors of the dead. Ancestral reverence is essential. The dead, or Zanset, protect and guide the living. Offerings of food, drink, and candles are made regularly to maintain their favor. The line between life and death is seen as fluid. Ancestors continue to interact with and influence the living world. Humans have multiple spiritual components, often referred to as T-Bon Anje, the person, spirit, or consciousness, and Grossbon Anje, the universal life force. Upon death, these aspects must be properly cared for through ritual, or they may linger as restless spirits.
Voodoo rituals combine drumming, song, dance, spirit possession, divination, and healing. Ceremonies usually occur in Onfu temples under the guidance of a Hungan, a priest, or a Mumbo priestess. The temple centers features the Poto Mitan, a sacred pillar connecting the human and spiritual realms. Around it, practitioners draw veve, sacred symbols made of cornmeal or ash to call specific Ewa. Rituals typically involve lighting candles, making food or drink offerings, singing, and dancing in rhythm to the drumming. Spirit possession, during which the Iwa speak or act through the possessed, and healing rites, blessings, and community feasts. Manje Iwa. Divination is performed using cards, shells, or communication with spirits, and herbal remedies are used for physical or spiritual ailments.
Voodoo and Catholicism are deeply intertwined. Many practitioners identify as both Catholic and Voodoo saint. Saints are often represent Iwa, for example, Saint Patrick with Dambala, Saint Peter with Papa Legba, Saint James with Ogun. The Catholic calendar aligns with Voodoo feasts, and prayers often begin with Christian invocations before transitioning into African calls and songs. This blending allowed Voodoo to survive colonial persecution and later anti-African sentiment. Even today, many ceremonies open with a sign of the cross or a Hail Mary before calling spirits.
Voodoo is not only spiritual, but also communal and political. It provides healing and social support through spiritual consultations, protection and justice, especially for the marginalized, moral and social order, reinforced through ritual obligations and taboos. Priests and priestesses act as both spiritual leaders and community mediators. Voodoo also serves as a repository of African heritage, music, and language, preserving traditions lost elsewhere in the diaspora.
Today, Voodoo thrives in both Haiti and the Haitian diaspora, particularly in New Orleans, New York, and Miami. It has also inspired art, literature, and social movements centered on cultural pride and African ancestry. Contemporary practitioners emphasize education and decolonization, reclaiming Voodoo from misrepresentation. Many Modern hoodoo.
Where were you?
The green.
No, you're purple.
Oh, I'm tired. Since the 19th century, voodoo has been heavily stigmatized, portrayed by Western media as witchcraft, cannibalism, or devil worship. Missionaries and colonial governments demonized it as superstition to undermine African cultural identity. U.S. occupation of Haiti from 1915 to 1934 reinforced these racist stereotypes in films, books, and newspapers, birthing the Hollywood voodoo zombie myth. In reality, voodoo's concept of the zombie is immoral and symbolic, not monstrous. It warns against spiritual imbalance or exploitation of others. Despite ongoing prejudice, voodoo remains a recognized religion in Haiti since 2003, with temples legally registered and rituals openly practiced.
And as he said, it thrives in both Haiti and the Haitian diaspora and all those other places. Contemporary practitioners emphasize education and decolonization, reclaiming voodoo from misrepresentation. Many modern Hungans and Mumbos use social media to teach rituals, ethics, and history, promoting voodoo as a source of empowerment rather than fear. Voodoo also intersects with environmentalism, viewing nature as sacred and spirits as custodians of land and the water. Community temples often double as centers for social aid, herbal medicine, and cultural preservation.
Key symbols and tools include veve, sacred geometric drawings represented specific Iwa,
Isagwe.
Asgoe, the high priest rank serving as an intermediary between humans and Bondye, drums central to invoking the spirits, altars decorated with candles, mirrors, crosses, and images of saints or ancestors, sacred colors. Each Iwa has a preferred color scheme. Red for Ogun, white for Dambala are the
Voodoo,
examples.
yeah. Voodoo teaches that spirit and matter are intertwined, and everything in existence it has spiritual significance. Harmony, respect for ancestors, and fulfilling obligations to the Iwa are the foundations of a balanced life. Misfortune occurs when one neglects their spiritual duties or breaks taboos. Its moral system is based not on sin but reciprocity and balance. Actions create consequences in both worlds. Healing, divination, and sacrifice restore this equilibrium. In conclusion, Haitian voodoo is far more than the characters portrayed in popular culture. It is a rich, complex religion of connection to ancestors, nature, and the divine. Born in resistance and maintained through faith, voodoo embodies the resilience and spiritual genius of the African diaspora. From its African origins to its role in the Haitian Revolution and modern identity, voodoo remains a living testament to survival, adaptation, and sacred power. It continues to shape Haitian culture, music, politics, and art, standing as one of the most misunderstood yet endearing spiritual traditions of the world. Before we finish out, I wanted to go over some of the more prominent figures in both hoodoo and voodoo, starting with hoodoo. The first we have is Marie Laveau from 1801 to 1881. The most famous New Orleans voodoo queen, though much of her real practice was a blend of hoodoo rootwork and Catholic folk spirituality. Known for healing, protection work, and the rituals performed in Congo Square, her reputation merged folk medicine, spiritual power, and community leadership. Her daughter, Marie Laveau II, continued her legacy, further popularizing New Orleans conjure traditions. Then we have Dr. Jim Jordan from the 19th century, a South Carolina root doctor known for his powerful charms and, and spells. Practiced traditional conjure alongside Christian prayer, showing how hoodoo survived in the post slavery South, and his teachings influenced later generations of rootwork and folk healers. Then we have Zora Neale Hurston from 1891 to 1960. They were an anthropologist and author who studied and practiced hoodoo during her fieldwork in the American South. She documented real hoodoo rituals in the 1931 work Mules and Men, one of the earliest respectful portrayals of the practice. And she trained under several conjure doctors and initiated in New Orleans, preserving oral traditions that would otherwise be lost. Then we have Black Herman, as mentioned before, or Benjamin Rucker from 1889 to 1934, one of the most famous hoodoo magicians and herbalists of the early 20th century, combining stage magic, spiritual work, and public healing. He wrote Secrets of Magic, Mystery, and Legerdemain, which became a foundational text for urban hoodoo practitioners. Then we have Prophet Walker in the early 1900s, who did hoodoo root work and Preach in Memphis, known for Bible conjure, blending sculpture with traditional African American folk magic. His methods influenced the later spiritual church movement, which mixed hoodoo and Pentecostalism. Then you have Catherine Ronwood, modern era, sorry if I said that wrong, scholar, practitioner, and owner of Lucky Mojo Curio Company, one of the most well known suppliers of hoodoo materials. They helped preserve traditional hoodoo practices by publishing guides and maintaining archives of rootwork and conjure. Then we have Doc Buzzard, or Stephen Robinson, which was the early mid 1900s, a South Carolina conjure doctor and healer who became a local legend for his powerful protection work and root cures. Famously served both black and white clients, bridging spiritual divides in the Jim Crow South.
Prominent figures in Haitian voodoo. Dutty
Boukman.
Boukman, a Jamaican-born voodoo priest who helped lead the boy Cayman ceremony, sparking the Haitian Revolution. Remembered as a spiritual revolutionary who united enslaved Africans through voodoo ritual and resistance. Cecil Fadiman, a Mambo priestess who co-led the boy Cayman ceremony with Bokuman, said to have been possessed by the spirit of Izili Dantor during the ritual, calling for liberation from French rule, symbol of female power in voodoo and Haitian independence. Papa Doc Francois Duvalier, president of Haiti, who publicly identified with voodoo imagery using symbols of barren samedi to project power and fear. Although controversial, his political use of voodoo made it globally recognizable. His regime fused politics, superstition, and ancestral identity in complex ways.
That's pretty cool.
Mambo Racine, renowned dancer, choreographer, and anthropologist who practiced voodoo and integrated its sacred movements into modern dance. Her research and performances elevated voodoo as a respected cultural and spiritual art form. She was also an initiate and advocate for voodoo's recognition as a legitimate religion. Mambo Salian Glassman, American-born voodoo priestess initiated in Haiti, founded the Island of Salvation Botanica in New Orleans, and works to demystify voodoo through education, art, and public ritual. Prominent figure in contemporary diasporic voodoo communities. Max Beauvoir, biochemist and author of Haitian voodoo, dedicates his life to formalizing voodoo institutions and combating anti-voodoo stigma, founded the National Confederation of Haitian Voodoo, representing practitioners internationally. Mama Lola, one of the most famous voodoo priestesses in the United States, based in Brooklyn. Her story was documented in a landmark ethnography, Mama Lola, a voodoo priestess in Brooklyn by Karen McCarthy Brown, helped reshape voodoo's image from mystical to community-based and healing-centered spirituality. Errol Dussault, contemporary voodoo priest and musician who integrates traditional voodoo liturgy with performance art, advocates for voodoo's global recognition as a faith rooted in African heritage and creativity. Cross-tradition figures and connections. While hoodoo and voodoo are distinct, few individuals or historical overlaps bridge the two. Marie Laveau is often cited as a connecting figure. She drew from both Louisiana hoodoo and Haitian voodoo. Zora Neale Hurston documented both hoodoo and Louisiana voodoo traditions in her anthropological field work.
It's a big word for almost.
Yeah. The New Orleans spiritual churches fused Catholicism, voodoo, and hoodoo, creating hybrid leaders and rituals that blur the lines between the two traditions.
Now that we've gone over both hoodoo and voodoo and the differences between them, the big players, and some artifacts, I think it's time to wind down for the night. Thank you for walking through the past with us tonight, and I hope you enjoyed it and don't feel too cursed with this new knowledge. I also hope that you one day get to feel the magic that New Orleans gives its travelers. Don't forget, if you are on a nightly binge through history or the swamps of Louisiana, bring Debbie along with you for some energy that won't make you feel bogged down by bayou waters and mud. If you have any stories, ideas for episodes, or you'd like to become a sponsor, send us a smoke signal through the voids at echosofthepast@gmail.com.
Thanks for wandering through history with us on Echoes of the Past.
If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate us, and tell that one friend who still quotes fun facts at parties.
And remember, history may repeat itself,
but we promise not to.
See you in the next Echo.
What you are going to hear next is an unedited version of Marie Laveau's story from a travel guide in New Orleans. He was a fantastic travel guide with a lot of knowledge. This is not the full tour. This is only the part of the tour that I wanted to get for this episode. It is a little hard to understand and a little hard to hear because it was in the middle of a street, but it is prominently about Miss Marie Laveau. If you would like to stay for it, buckle up, because here we go.
But you can just imagine how a religion might have butted heads with French Catholicism back in the day. But that was all the way over there by Jackson Square. This area was Congo Square. This was Little Haiti, Little Jamaica out here. And Marie Laveau, this building right across the street from us here, that was her forever home. She was born here as a woman of color into freedom back in 1801. And not just freedom, she was born here into wealth, into luxury. Because her grandmother had been a slave named Catherine, came over to this area from Haiti into the employ of a Creole woman, a local, who not only paid her for her work, oh, look at the rat. What? Oh yeah, went right across there. They're pretty humble out here. You usually just see them running away, but if you lifted this city up, it's just a sheer foundation of wriggling rats out here. But yeah, so Catherine, for having earned her freedom in her own lifetime, for over a full generation before Marie Laveau was even ever born, her family were already pretty well ingratiated into New Orleans. You know, they established themselves out here socially and fiscally, and for that comfort, they were also able to pass down some of their own familial practices and beliefs. To the point where while living there, in that comfort, by the time she had turned 21, Marie Laveau had already begun her first line of work. Her own business that she started herself right out of the house here. She became a hairdresser. The hairdresser. It's kind of hard to see in the dark past this guy here, but you can see all the hair ties and scrunchies and the hooks left out front there for her. And if you have a clip you don't mind leaving behind, perfect spot for it. Because it didn't matter if you were a noble or a street rat. If you lived in this city and had hair, oh, it's okay. Oh, okay, it's the umbrella. What was it called? But basically, you could have wound up in her chair. And if there is one thing that hairdressers are especially good at doing, it's the gossiping and the listening to the gossiping. And if you know one, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and who I'm talking about. But it was along to where she came to know a little bit of everything about a little bit of everybody in New Orleans. And she kind of became like the original Facebook for that knowledge. She was selling stolen data left and right to whoever might want to buy it from her. And on its own, that heavily split public opinion. You know, like a lot of people loved Madame Laveau. They genuinely believed in her. A lot of people hated her. Thought she was unnatural, intrusive. Everyone through the city had one opinion or another for me. But everybody seemed at least to know Marie Laveau. In particular, for her sideline of work. Because it initially started as only a hobby that would see her leaving the house a lot of days, wearing charms and a tinian and a large pet snake named King Zombie that she would drape around her shoulders, and they would walk around town doling out her voodoo services for folks. Which again, could entail anything and everything. Like, she did not discriminate. And God knows if you caught a woman on a bad day. But apparently, her powers really worked. Like, it came to where through general word of mouth, she wouldn't even have to leave the house most days. She'd have folks lined about the front door, stretching around a rampart there, hoping to get some of her services. The woman was baptized for her birth in the Catholic city and raised with voodoo. She effectively single-handedly bridged the gap between her family and her city. And really what I love about New Orleans, like how English is that bastardization of all the different languages mushed together. Yeah, that's what this city is. It's all the cultures held together with chewing gum and duct tape and hair tie. She got as many clients out of here as Dr. DeFeo did over on Charter Street. It was right around that time. So I'm just left to wonder if early medicine or voodoo was more effective against the yellow fever. But while doing her best to help folks with her practices and beliefs that she was raised with, rumors just continued to swirl about. And not even the typical stuff of voodoo and mysticism, you know, that's building up the reputation. But while here, over the course of her life, Marie Laveau had been married twice. And no matter what La Laurie might have told you a full generation before with her 3 husbands, sorry, I'm like yelling right in your guys' faces as they get closer here for that. But a marriage back then was effectively seen as till death and beyond. Or it was one and done. However it might have ended, that was the honor to be gained at the time. But having 2 husbands over the course of a lifetime might not have even negatively impacted her reputation all that severely if her first husband didn't just vanish. With no word and no body, people just come here and say, "I'm sorry that happened." Alright, but in her time here, doing her best to help folks with those practices and beliefs, and being married twice, the first fella, basically for disappearing and nobody wanting to deal with it, the second fella didn't help anymore. Because the first husband was a Haitian revolution, but the second guy was a local white businessman. And interracial marriages out here at that time, they were not frowned upon. They were illegal. It did not happen. But again, no one wanted to say no to her, so they had their own ceremony right over there in the Garden Square area. And I can only ever imagine the second relationship being better than the first was, because they lived there together a little over 3 decades until the husband died at 66. Again, it's really good for the area in the time. And in their time out of here together, they had 15 children. Saying, that wipes me out just to say it. Twixt the 2 of them, they popped out 8 boys and 7 girls. And every single girl they named Marie Laveau Jr. Yeah, differing middle names for each of them, but a regular George Foreman situation they had going on in there otherwise. And it proved to be a bit of a better practice her way. Like, she was primarily trying to ensure the name could be passed down in her family. It's like I've been saying all through the night tonight. Mortality, back in those days out here, it was high for everyone. Infant mortality was not an exception. Of their 15 children here together, only 2 lived to be the age of 20. Jesus. And only one of them saw it through to 40, which is a statistical anomaly, even for the time out here. And the one that survived, Marie Laveau Jr., take your pick, she was said to be the spitting image to Mama, to the point where it only caused rumors to continue to grow. Because how I started this story, the original cottage cabin that encompassed about half of this building here now, it served as Laveau's forever home from 1801 to 1881. It's double the life expectancy. And it said in her time here, the hand of age never touched her. Apparently she was walking around town the day before she died, looking generally healthy. But that was Junior. As Mama began to approach her twilight years, Junior took on a dual role. She'd leave the house a lot, waving, purposefully being seen, just so she might be able to sneak back around and then come out dressed as Mama, aged up a bit with makeup or wearing a snake. That way no one can ever watch the Queen of Voodoo visibly aging. Apparently they've been doing this for years together. Now, the day she actually died, Marie Laveau's forever tomb was all set to go right next to her second husband in St. Louis Cemetery. That's about 3 blocks left and 1 back of the center gate over there. And funny enough, her tomb, La Laurie's tomb, and Nicolas Cage's pyramid are all kind of right next to each other near the center front out there. But again, I can't wait to attend that. It's going to be a great party. But Laveau spent about 2 weeks here at the house posthumously before being interred next to Nicolas out there. And her funeral, forget about Mardi Gras or Bourbon Street or any carrying on you've seen out here. That cemetery for her, it was packed and it was hopping. Because whether you loved her or hated her, nobody wanted to be absent to the Queen of Voodoo's funeral. They knew she might not be done judging people. And apparently she still isn't. Like I said, I've gone to talk to Mr. Logan here. According to him and others up and down here, they've sworn this is where they've seen Marie Laveau spending her death for having spent her life. I'm sure you guys, you've seen the commercialization of this city, of the voodoo marts that are glorified drugstores, but taken with that grain of salt, the reality is legitimately practiced out here to this day. So you just want to keep an open mind and a closed bladder, and look for the authenticity where you can find it. Yeah, try not to leave with a curse, that's a little too authentic, but Say, you just wouldn't want to disrespect the queen of voodoo when she was alive. God knows what she's learned since then. Hope they make it. Friends she's made along the way. Never like seeing an emergency vehicle at the whims of French Quarter traffic. But you always want to treat the voodoo like it's real while you're here. You guys, do you have any questions on Madame Marie Laveau?